Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Front Page Fitness. This is episode number 16. I am still Eric Trexler, joined by the Dr. Lauren Colenso-Semple. Lauren, how are we doing tonight?
We're doing well. My youngest son had some teeth extractions this week.
Oh,
Very
boy.
expensive. And for the listener, all my children are dogs. So that is Ted, my Yorkie. But he's recovering well, and he promises to pay me back someday.
Awesome. Was he very cute and funny when he was coming out of anesthesia?
The thing about dogs that small, he's just over 2 pounds. When they're under, they get really, really cold. And so the biggest thing is rewarming them after. But I have a great vet, and the vet techs and stuff do like skin to skin to warm them
Oh,
back
my
up.
God. All right. Yeah, I'd file that under cute then. So I'll take it.
It's pretty cute.
Yeah. I just wanted to take a moment, since this is my first time with a new background, to appreciate the 9 national championships of Ohio State football and the 5 national championships of Duke men's basketball. Those are displayed on banners behind me. I needed to take a moment to acknowledge that, and now we can crop back in with the power of technology. And so for those watching on YouTube, I'm adjusting so many video settings. It's truly a multimedia experience here. But Lauren, we got some business to take care of. First of all, I need to promote us in a different venue. So I don't know if we ever mentioned this on Front Page Fitness, but we did what I would consider functionally a bonus episode, basically. So we stepped in to do an episode of the Iron Culture podcast, and that's a podcast that I host every week, typically co-hosted by Eric Helms, but he was doing some kind of nonsense trip. He went to, I think, Europe and was judging people, a bodybuilding judge, which I'm morally against rendering that kind of judgment. So he was judging people and doing all sorts of various bodybuilding activities. So Lauren, you graciously stepped in. And so if you like Front Page Fitness and you're like, you know what, I understand that I'm listening to episode number 16, but I just wish there were 17. The reality is that special 17th episode essentially is floating out there. So all you got to do is wherever you get Front Page Fitness, search for a podcast called Iron Culture. It's episode 336, came out a couple weeks ago. But it's basically just us doing more of our thing. We talked about some recent research. This is more like a singular focus on just a couple papers, but we talked about research about being attractive, being cool, and being good. And at the end of the day, Lauren, who doesn't want to be one of those elusive, special, good, attractive, cool people, right? You want to hit for the cycle. You want to catch them all. And so we talk about the science of what goes into rating people as attractive, or in this case, it was specifically the male physique mostly. But we also talked about different traits that were associated with being viewed as cool or being viewed as good.
Interesting that you mentioned you're morally opposed to judging people and then dive into the fact that we talked about the science of the attractive male physique.
Well, okay, so I'm glad you brought that up. What we were discussing, Lauren, is hard-hitting objective science using subjective measures that I wasn't making, looking in the aggregate. So yes, I was doing science where Helms was doing, juvenile and very rude and mean judgment. So I think that's the dichotomy that I want to really establish and reinforce from now until the end of time. So where I'm doing science,
I also recall that if
you
were cool, you couldn't be good, and if you were good, I thought they were the opposite ends of that spectrum. It was a cool or good situation. You couldn't be both. Is that inaccurate? Am I misremembering?
Well, I erroneously spoke in a way that made it seem that way, but we quickly clarified. So no, you could be both cool and good, but they're basically looking at what kind of clusters of traits or characteristics seem to kind of collectively describe one versus the other. So it's not that they're a dichotomy. It's not that they are on opposite sides of a spectrum. It's that they represent simply different mixing and matching of these different potential traits and characteristics.
I recall that you didn't see yourself as that cool.
That is true. But in the interest of self-love, I gave myself the credential of good. So I said,
Right.
I'm not cool, but I believe I am good. Um, you found yourself away as cool, I think, which I found to
Super
be
cool.
very surprising, which is not to
Mm,
say that I'm claiming that you're not cool.
sounds like
Um,
it.
yeah, but I don't know. It's as is always the case with any kind of like personality related research. One of the things you brought up, which is very poignant and true, is that it's really all about context. So a great example is when I got to grad school, I was extremely, extremely introverted. Like people in my lab were not really certain if I ever talked or really
Mm,
had any thoughts outside of the context of just doing the work immediately in front of me. But then the first summer came along and it was like the conference circuit. And I was out in front of a poster presenting research and they pulled me aside and they're like, who are you? What has happened to you? Because in the context of an academic conference, I became extremely extroverted. I had a lot to say. It was fun engaging with, I think I'm one of those people that if I go to a social gathering and it's just a gathering for its own sake, or it's, a blank party, a Christmas party, a holiday party, Halloween party, whatever, I show up there and I grab a beer so I know what to do with my hands. And I'm just standing there and I'm like, what do people talk about? And I really get in my own head. I'm like, I'm not sure that I necessarily have anything to contribute in this context. So I'm just going to stay out of the way. But when you go to a conference, we know what we're there for. We're talking about science and the related topics. So yeah, I think it, like you said, Lauren, when we talked about it in Iron Culture, it's extremely context dependent when you really come out of your shell and become the cool Lauren, which it sounds like for you is probably the default Lauren that you kind of rein in different contexts.
Well, I can attest to your extroversion and confidence at conferences because that's how we met when you, the Eric Trexler, walked up to me and handed me a business card that I believe said PhD student on it.
Yeah. So I was very privileged to be in a fellowship where they printed business cards for us. It was a cool little fellowship. Like they were really big on like professional development and stuff. So they're like, here, business cards with your all your contact information. So go out to the conference and make it rain. Just go out to every conference every summer and hand these things out and make connections. And so, hey, it started a friendship. We eventually went into business together. We've published papers together. You still do owe me that first draft of your thesis project, which I'm expecting. I think that's what you're presenting at that conference.
No, that was
No?
before I did that study.
Okay. What were you presenting? Do you remember?
Mm,
Probably not.
like the diet break thing.
Okay. Well, that makes sense because I would have had a lot to say about that. So, but yeah, conferences, come out of my shell, interact with people and enjoy it
Mm-hmm.
very much. But yeah, so your claim was that you are cool, but that you can turn it on and off depending on the context.
Well, you've been teasing this new slang, which sort of sounds like you're embracing the youths and
Yeah.
that's coolness, right?
Yes.
So, speaking of, so I recently rewatched My Cousin Vinny, which I'm sure you've seen, but there's a scene where he's like, the Utes. And the judge is like, what is a Ute? And so now I think that's a good way to say youths. But I forgot that that was where it came from.
A Ute is actually the mascot of
Mhm.
Utah. They have a pretty good football team, the Utah Utes. I believe, pardon my ignorance, I believe that is drawn from the Utah tribe. native to that region of Utah. So that is, if I were in that film, that's what I would have replied with, one of the two answers. But anyway, as you said, Lauren, I was engaging with young people, doing some research.
I have to interrupt to say I
Okay.
know that about Ute and Utah and all of that, and this will make me sound very uncool, but that is a very common crossword word, UTE.
Mm. Yeah, you're really carving out your niche as the very cool crossword puzzle aficionado. So
Yes,
cool in some circles where the median age is 74.
we love our over 70 listeners.
Absolutely, and huge for marketing. Like when you're trying to get advertising, get sponsors for a podcast, that's the demographic they want. Find the 70 to 95 demographic. That's where the money is.
Well, you've
Um,
already tried to hawk those geriatric pants, so
I
we're right
know
on.
I'm so ready to make money in about 40 years once my content starts resonating with the right demographic. But anyway, um, I was collecting some data with people that are objectively like very cool. And they were, using cool people slang. And Lauren, I think the best way to make you feel as incredulous as I did is I want you to ask me a question where you're expecting a response in the affirmative. Is the sky blue? Yes. So you go ahead and ask me that question. And I'm not going to answer in the exact tempo that one normally would, because I want to make sure I really enunciate this and get the words through. But you go ahead and ask me a question where you're expecting an answer in the affirmative.
Do you live in North Carolina?
Type shit. Have you
No.
ever...
No.
Are you aware of this? Have you heard this?
I mean, I've heard tight, like, cool.
No, so that's why I wanted to enunciate. Type. As in like
Oh, type with a
yeah,
P?
with a P.
Type shit?
Correct.
Meaning yes?
Correct. I
What?
was stunned. It's literally the first time this has happened to me. I remember when I was like 21, sitting in my lectures and, listening to my square professors give a lecture. And I was like, I'm never going to be that out of touch in the entirety of my life. I will never drift that far. And this was the first time in my life I had to pull aside one of their peers and say, you got to help me out. I don't know what's happening. So apparently among young people, and particularly cool young people, you could answer, instead of saying yes or sure or that's correct, you could say type shit. Those two words, and that essentially translates to a yes. Now, I'm not being critical. These were very pleasant individuals I was engaging with. They were a lot of fun, very kind people, very good people. But I am very troubled by what's happening to this precious language of ours that's been developing over so many years. I'm concerned that it's taking a turn, and I don't know if we can come back.
So when I was doing data collection with some research assistants that were 20, 21, there was some slang that I learned, like that slaps, in reference to a Starbucks breakfast sandwich. But this is far, far worse and concerning because it's more words. So it's not easier. It's not more efficient. And I mean, are we supposed to enunciate one of those words more than the other? Are we supposed to emphasize? Is it like type shit or type shit?
No, the former. Type shit.
Type shit.
Yeah.
I hate this. I've already ranted about Gen Z and whatever the next one is. I don't like it. I don't understand it.
Listen,
and it needs to stop.
there's going to be, Lauren, if we're fortunate enough we've got several decades ahead of us, and I just want you to know this is getting worse. This is not going
Who's
to get
making
better.
this stuff up, though?
Um, I can't say. Believe me, when people like you and I are so far on the periphery that we need a translator to kind of get to the bottom of all this and
Yeah.
figure out what's happening, surely the idea that we could identify a source is long gone. This is completely baked in terms of slang. So I just want to put that on your radar. I wanted to let you know, and I also was looking forward to seeing how incredulous you would be about that particular approach to, saying the word yes.
Look, we talked about fiber maxing with the two X's and looks maxing and some other but no.
Far worse.
This doesn't work for me.
Yeah, this is far worse. But anyway, I'm looking forward to what the next I think I got a good 40 years left in me. I don't know if I'm going to make it 50, but I got a good 40 left. So I'm along for the ride. I'm not going to judge. I'm just here to see what happens. But anyway, Lauren.
Well, since we're on the forefront of, the cool community, why don't we just start making shit up and see if it sticks?
Well, I opted out of that. You're the one who claimed cool.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah,
Oh.
so that's on you, and I think by episode 17, you should have plenty of stuff cooked up.
Okay.
I would recommend trickling them in over time rather than just doing one big episode where you're just kind of spamming with nonsensical language. But hey, whatever you can come up with, maybe it'll stick. If you really are as cool as you say, as cool as you claim, then I'm sure it'll go great.
I can be a trendsetter.
Okay, it sounded a little more like aggressive than you would typically expect from a...
Well, you didn't sound like you had a lot of belief in my ability to influence. So
yeah,
I was a bit offended.
You are an influencer, so I'm sure you can influence.
All right.
One last thing we should mention very briefly. The way that you are concerned about slang, I'm very concerned that we got an email from a separate listener who sent us yet another diagram, a drawing, so to speak, of intertwined sleeping. And not as a hypothetical, like maybe this is how it works. And this is a callback to a prior episode where we're talking about research on different sleeping positions. But so another person who not only drew out what intertwined sleeping could look like, but said, this is how I sleep with my significant other. And we've been doing this essentially nightly it was several years, Lauren. I forget the exact number, but this is like, they're going to be doing this probably well into their 80s at this point. And for me, I've been on record very strongly saying human beings should sleep like vampires, on your back, arms across your chest. If you're like me, maybe you put a pillow or two beneath the knees, because who doesn't have at this point a back or a hip problem? So to me, that's the only really acceptable way to sleep. The idea of intertwined is unfathomable. The idea of sleeping face to face is detestable. That is an option that I honestly don't even like bringing up. Intertwined is my border where I can say I reject it, but I can speak about it. Face to face sleeping as a long-term solution is extremely chaotic, not appropriate, and really has no place in any world I want to live in. So, Lauren, how do you feel about this?
Well, I appreciate this email, and I was thrilled to receive another, with an attached diagram. I think that's amazing. They have been together for 8 years, which is quite a while. And by the sounds of it, they not only fall asleep in this position, they maintain that position. And so the most shocking part of this email was, we also sleep in a full-size bed.
Yeah.
We've experienced a king size while on vacation, but have found we still end up intertwined and taking up the same amount of space, so it feels pointless to get a larger bed. And that's where you lose me. I want my own room to spread out. I don't want foot touching. I don't want elbow touching.
Yeah. Yeah, because and for me, it's not that I'm like selfish and saying I need my space. It's like, if I'm in a bed where I feel like I'm bumping up or brushing against the other person, I start to think like you need to make yourself smaller so that you're not interfering with their sleep. You know what I mean? So for me, I'm like stressed out over how I'm impacting the other person's sleep. And so for me, whether you're in it for your own interests or you just don't want to be a rude bedmate, uh, why not go with the widest bed that you can swing based on the cost of the bed, the size of the room? I get there's going to be constraints, but for God's sakes, the idea, Lauren, of sharing a king size bed and gravitating toward the middle such that you are like locking arms and looping legs over each other. I mean, it's just not, it doesn't make any sense. It's something that goes into my brain and gets immediately rejected in a violent way. So
And
I
the
can't,
insides of your elbows are going to sweat. Like it's that the skin to skin contact and the heat transfer. I like a very cool sleeping environment because I am a very cool person. But the touching does not facilitate a cool sleeping environment.
yeah, you also like a cool sleeping environment because you're a human being. That's kind of how we work. We I think that's a pretty universal thing. You may have some variants, but like generally speaking, human beings sleep well in a cool environment. Not coincidentally, nights are cooler than the daytime. There's a whole system that we've worked out over the last several million years. But anyway, your point is taken. Yeah, the elbow sweat, the proximity, the sharing of body heat. There's just a million things to hate about this.
Mm.
Now, I appreciate the listener. I appreciate their feedback and their contribution. But in terms of the actual subject matter, I hate every bit of it, and I reject it fully. And I honestly, this is an insane thing that I've come to realize about myself, but I am convinced that I sleep better than the average person. The way that you inexplicably think you're cool, I inexplicably think I'm very good at sleeping. Because I think it's because I don't sleep enough. So my wife is like worried about my health because there are many nights, there's a variable in sleep research called sleep latency. And it's basically you lay down to sleep, how long does it take you to fall asleep? And there's kind of a range that they want you to be in, right? They want you to not pass out the second you lay down, but they also don't want you to like, when I say they, I mean like medical professionals interpreting your sleep data. They also don't want you like staring at the ceiling for 45 minutes. There's a sweet spot in the middle that's considered indicative of a person who is sleeping the right amount and not having issues getting to sleep. I sometimes fall asleep within 10 seconds of hitting the bed. I have no reason to. I've never seen my wife finish brushing her teeth because I go first and she has good dental hygiene apparently and brushes for a while. I don't think I've ever caught her finish brushing her teeth because I fall asleep instantly, oftentimes with my glasses on. But all that is to say, I fall asleep instantly. I wake up when my alarm goes off. I'm ready to start my day. And for those reasons, and I haven't moved an inch, I'm still in my vampire position. I feel like I have the deepest and most undisturbed sleep. And for some reason, that's a point of pride for me.
So I don't think this is a you thing. I think this is men. And
Mm-hmm.
I do not have any data to support this, but my
Perfect.
experience as a human, and speaking with many other women about their partner falling asleep, these guys, you can fall asleep anywhere, in any position. It doesn't matter what stress is going on in your life, what there is to worry about. We lie awake, stressing out, worrying, overthinking, contemplating, and you guys are just completely passed out, regardless of what else is going on.
Well, I'm glad you bring that up because I think I have a solution. Have you tried worrying less and thinking less?
It must be my cortisol.
It must be, and that is a segue here. So we got a link here getting into more science adjacent topics. The headline that you put here is 5 exercises to decrease your cortisol face. And this is a link to TikTok, which already gives me some serious reservations. I'm not on TikTok. I've generally found that the content sometimes, Lauren, sometimes lacks rigor and nuance. But you take it away. What are our 5 exercises, and what can I do? We were just talking about how, I hit the bed and I'm out. I may, in fact, be tossing and turning tonight, staring at the ceiling, worried about cortisol face. So what can I do?
Well, I need you to watch the video
Okay.
while I describe.
29 seconds. What an investment. Okay.
All right. So, for the lovely listener, this is a woman who has basically made her whole online identity on TikTok and Instagram about cortisol. So it's, cortisol belly, it's cortisol face, it's the high cortisol she used to have and how she no longer has it. So these 5 exercises involve her sort of licking the air and pointing her chin up, and then pulling her ears up, wiping the bottom of her chin, rubbing the side of her face, and, essentially describing this as, inflammation reducing and stress reducing, such that your cortisol face will no longer be. Did you watch, Trex?
I did watch, and I feel like I'm still very, very, very confused. But yeah, this is pretty wild. There are things that I would not typically consider necessarily exercises, but there is a lot of rubbing and a lot of, like you said, putting the tip of the tongue on the upper lip. So, I mean, you know a thing or two about hormones. I mean, is this something I ought to be investing my time and effort into?
Cortisol face is a thing being used by influencers to describe weight loss. So they'll be like, look at this picture of me when I had cortisol face, and they lost some weight through calorie deficit.
So they're not using it to describe weight loss. It's basically having fat in your face. So after they lose weight, they're saying, I lost my cortisol face.
Correct.
Yeah.
And of course, I mean, there are reasons why you might have just a slightly puffier face one day or another. Perhaps you had a lot of sodium the night before, too much alcohol the night before. Maybe you're dehydrated. Maybe you're jet lagged, and you just got off a long flight, and you are just a little bit puffier. But this is basically part of a whole narrative of saying, it's not fat. So don't worry about your diet. No. Don't worry about physical activity. It's purely cortisol, and let's target it in these very, very bizarre ways.
Yeah. And I think it's probably helpful to have some context here. Basically, if you had Cushing's disease or Cushing's syndrome, which is a medical condition where you have a very, very, very high cortisol levels.
Chronically elevated.
Yeah.
Like you don't have the normal fluctuation.
Correct. Chronically elevated, throughout the entirety of the day, and very, very, very high. And there is a number of, kind of physical manifestations of having Cushing's syndrome or Cushing's disease. So, you may find that you have more abdominal fat. You may find, that your cheeks get a little puffier, may have a little more red coloration to them. You may find a little more fat accumulation kind of in like your upper back. There's kind of a morphological set of changes that may occur in response to this, this pathology, this medical condition. And so it seems like what's going on here, Lauren, is that influencers have said, okay, so we know what happens in this medical condition where you have chronically elevated cortisol, very, very, very high. Again, chronically meaning, it's not just like a little flash in the pan. And so what I'm going to do is pretend that Cushing syndrome basically is a spectrum that goes all the way from Cushing syndrome to a person with low cortisol, and treat it as if every tiny, imperceptible, acute fluctuation in cortisol is putting you one step closer to having Cushing syndrome, and also giving you the physical manifestations of having Cushing syndrome or Cushing's disease. And ultimately, like, I think it's useful when we're talking about stuff like this to at least kind of say, like, where in the world is this coming from? Because frankly, when people speak about this stuff with a high level of confidence, and then other people that you trust say, that's dumb, don't listen to it. I mean, that's good if you've already built up that trust in the person that you're listening to who's steering you away from it. But at the same time, it is kind of important to say, like, but help me understand how and why they're speaking about this so confidently, so authoritatively, and why does everyone believe them and in the comments reinforce what they're saying? Like, it really feels like they're on to something here and there's some truth to it. Help me see this disconnect where you're saying there's no truth to it and they're saying it is established fact or science. And sometimes it's very helpful to kind of say, here is the grain of truth that they're operating from, and here are the myriad reasons why it's a completely inappropriate extrapolation, exaggeration, or just like a complete disregard for the concept of magnitude in general. And so that's ultimately what seems to be going on here, is people really leaning into concerns and fears about these kind of manifestations associated with a particular medical condition with very, very high chronic cortisol levels, and then saying, what do I need to do to rectify these symptoms that I clearly don't have?
Right. I think that when there is a kernel of truth, it does make it more believable. And when you're presenting in a way that speaks to an issue that a lot of people genuinely have, something that they are trying to address. So, oh, I do have fat around my midsection. Oh, I am stressed. Like, my face does look puffier than it used to. And so then to give them this very clean explanation for that is, unfortunately compelling, even though it's just a bunch of bullshit.
And by the way, you cannot do better than cortisol. Like, it's perfect because, like you said, Lauren, people are like, you know what? I did notice that I have a little more fat around my midsection. Yeah, most people do as they age. We see the charts. We know what it looks like. And then, I think my face is a little puffier. Yeah, like that. Old people's faces, they tend to gain a little weight, look a little puffier. That's kind of how it goes. And then the question that an influencer might pose to you is, you know what? You mentioned that you have a little bit of fat around the belly, a little bit of fat in your cheeks. Do you ever get stressed by chance? And so then it's like, oh my God, I feel like I'm talking to an oracle. You've completely nailed every problem I have, including the cause, the root causative factor. So what do I need to do? What supplement is going to clear this up? How many times do I touch my tongue to the upper lip? You give me the blueprint because you called it. And my idiot doctor just keeps telling me to lose 5 pounds. So yeah, it really is beautiful when you're asking someone, hey, I noticed that you're a 38-year-old human. Do you ever get stressed? Yes. That is called middle life. You got kids, job, etc. You're stressed. So it really is quite the grift to pull. You know what? And I should be more charitable. I'm sure some people actually believe what they're putting out there in this genre of content. But yeah, it's a nasty little closed loop of, I'm going to call out things that clearly you're experiencing, because most people do. Going to call out a root cause that you're almost certainly experiencing, and that makes for a very compelling tale.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of when, at first when the GLP-1s were becoming more widespread and everyone's really excited about it. And then you have this wave of you're going to get Ozempic butt, you're going to get Ozempic face. And a lot of fear mongering about what is essentially just the result of a large amount of weight loss, and you probably weren't lifting weights while you were losing said weight, and therefore it's both fat loss and muscle loss, and this is sort of the end result, and it's not Ozempic in and of itself that's giving you this butt or this face.
Yeah, no, I think I said this on this podcast, if memory serves, so I don't want to belabor the point and double up on the rant, but to me, that discourse around Ozempic face particularly was so astounding, and people were talking about it and there was all this attention to it, But my response to it was just so fundamentally distinct from all the articles I was seeing in the chatter online, because I was like, this is the ultimate testament to two things. Number one, how amazing these GLP-1 drugs are. And number two, how remarkably poor the last several decades of weight loss advice, research, etc. has been in terms of outcomes. Because
Yeah.
essentially, like you said, Lauren, we were seeing the natural consequence of an effective weight loss program, and we were treating it as if it was like some novel, completely fabricated disease we've never encountered yet. Because long-term maintained weight loss success is so rare in all of the behavioral trials that we try to do, and all the other kind of drugs or supplements that popped up. We thought they were promising. We did the interventions, they fell flat. So yeah, to me, it was just such a testament to how hard weight loss is, that like we were fundamentally not accustomed to seeing what it actually looks like when it works. And it was causing, like Ozempic face was people losing the fat in their face, which most people in weight loss trials, they don't get lean enough to see that happen. But if you talk to any bodybuilder, physique athlete, that's how you judge if someone's like ready to roll. It's like, bro, your face looks like you're dead. You look like a skeleton. Like some people literally call it death face on a bodybuilder. And I remember the competition where I won my pro card. I walked in, and everybody's freezing cold because they have no thyroid hormone, so everybody's wearing sweats, hoodie, long sleeve sweatpants. And I remember walking in, and it's like the athletes meeting before the event kicked off. And I'm looking around, and I'm like, oh my God, no one here looks as bad as I do, just from my face. Like no one looks like they're on the verge of death. And I was like, I'm gonna win this show. And I did. Like you can, in a lot of like smaller local shows, you can judge the show with a pretty high level of accuracy in full sweats. Like it really is just cheekbones and like, do you have enough muscle to fill out that sweatshirt? And if you have really pronounced cheekbones and you have Ozempic face basically, and you're filling out the sweatshirt, you're going to win that show if no one else is in that boat. But Lauren, this is a great little segue, because the other thing we had on our outline tonight, one of the other things was Ozempic penis. Okay. And this is, of all the Ozempic blanks, this is one that I think really is getting into the very personal details of what's happening with Ozempic. So you've heard of Ozempic face, you've heard of Ozempic butt. And the headline that you posted here in the outline is Ozempic penis. Males are reporting a surprise new GLP-1 side effect. And when it's framed like that, I'm sure a lot of males are looking at that and saying, please tell me this is good news and not bad news. So Lauren, what's going on with Ozempic penis? What could possibly be happening?
Well, apparently many Reddit users, and Reddit, very, very evidence-based platform. You can trust everything you read on Reddit. And these men are saying that they have penile growth of up to 1.5 inches due to Ozempic use.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, Reddit, the little hack, if you want to get some advice there, you don't go on Reddit and ask for a solution to a question. What you do is you go in there and boldly assert a solution to the question you have, knowing it's wrong, and everyone will come correct you. And that is the quickest way to actually get advice on Reddit. But Lauren, I must say, what we're looking at here is same old story. Like when you got a drug going on and the side effects everybody's talking about are it working and doing its main job, that's a pretty good place to be in. That's not to say that there aren't other side effects, but the ones that really seem to be getting a lot of hype are like, basically, hey, like humans store fat all over for the most part. There's very few parts of our body where we literally don't store any fat. Turns out you also store fat around the base of your penis. And if you lose like 60 pounds, some of that fat's going to go away. And you are going to experience what our dear friends on Reddit are reporting. So, Lauren, there's really not much else to it.
I have another question.
Okay.
How often are, middle-aged adult men measuring their penises?
I would venture to say that very few of them are actually doing rigorous methodology in terms of measurement.
Okay.
But, they're probably just simply noticing, like, hey, that visually seems different to me. And so I think that is probably what's happening.
I
Now,
couldn't see it over my gut, and now I can see it.
no, I think, in order to make that observation, you'd have to have some initial reference point, one would think. But the real question is, after that initial realization of, hey, visually, it's kind of like, Lauren, if you told someone who had a history of like, hey, I really don't want you stepping on the scale because you've had a lot of body image and disordered eating concerns in your past, but we are going to start moving more. We're going to clean up your diet, focus on eating more vegetables and fruits. They will be able to look in the mirror and say, I've lost a meaningful amount of weight. They won't know how many pounds, but they'll say, hey, I can visually detect things are changing. The question is, after that initial realization, are these people then doing rigorous measurement? Is that how we're getting this actual estimate of the length gains that are occurring? That, Lauren, I cannot tell you. We're going to have to leave that up to the imagination of you, me, and the listeners. It's very hard to say, but I will say, based on stereotypes, Reddit people do like to be very quantitative and very detail oriented. So I would not be shocked. I would not be shocked in the least.
Later in the article, if anyone's interested, this is Healthline, Ozempic penis. They do go into some guidelines if you would like to measure yours.
You're kidding me. Oh my goodness.
Do not, no.
Okay. Oh man. Yeah, I just couldn't. I couldn't possibly bring myself to read these with a microphone in front of me out loud. But Lauren, I like the way you put that. If you are interested in using rigorous methods for your own monitoring or experimentation, this website, healthline.com, I can't imagine they have too many articles about Ozempic penis. So I think the readers will be able to find their way toward what they're looking for.
Yes, I think so.
All right. Moving on. Let's talk a little bit about odor. So we've talked a little bit about old man smell or old person smell, correct?
Old person, yes.
Yeah,
It was not
old
sex
person
specific.
smell. Yeah. So I was just thinking, because we really turned it into, for some reason, all about me. In me eating giant mushrooms and trying to win my battle against the slow but inevitable onset of old person smell. But now we're going to talk about good old-fashioned BO. So this is going to open us up to that 18 to 35 demographic. It's really going to open us up to that 12 to 16 demographic, if anyone remembers middle school and high school. But what we see here from the New York Post, hard-hitting journalism as always, women's armpit BO can be relaxing for men, but only in these circumstances. Now, this is what I like to see, Lauren. You've really done your job here, because I'm very intrigued to know what these circumstances are. But why don't you take it away and kind of fill us in on what's behind the headline?
Well, this is interesting because, we're going back to one of my areas of interest, the menstrual cycle. And
Okay.
so hormones are fluctuating across the menstrual cycle.
Confirmed.
We're well aware of that.
Yep.
But apparently there's research showing that women's body odor changes throughout the menstrual cycle. And it is more appealing during ovulation when fertility peaks.
More appealing. So that is so that's interesting. When we say more appealing, genuine question here. Are we saying less repelling? Or are we actually saying like this is something that is detected as something that smells good?
More pleasing.
Wow.
Was the way it was described.
That is really shocking to me. I will say this though, and this is kind of crazy now that I think about it. If you ask me to give some kind of description about what female body odor smells like, I don't think I can actually describe or even think of what that smell is at all. Now, like male body odor is truly a horrific thing, and it's burned into my memory of what that smells like. But yeah, it's I'm very befuddled right now because I'm trying to think of like, oh well, if they're saying it's more pleasing, like think to what female body odor smells like, and I cannot conjure up a thing. Like I think I've always kind of operated in my brain as if basically men have nasty body odor and women just have an absence of body odor. I never really considered that they just have a different genre of body odor. And I think maybe I'm proving the point here of kind of like the theory behind this, which is like, yeah, I haven't really, I don't think I've ever really been able to detect such a thing. As a female, does that sound insane to you?
No, because I think most men smell far worse than most women,
Yeah.
but there's definitely a spectrum of people who really stink and people whose BO isn't that bad, and I think those people fall in both sex categories, in
Yeah.
my experience.
So, okay, let's say that we're dealing with a median smelly male and a median smelly female. So what you're telling me is the median smelly male smells worse, no question. But to you, the median smelly female, is this something where you say like, dude, you gotta take a shower, put on some deodorant? Or is this something where you're saying, I can detect that, no big deal?
I think there are fewer women who, if they walk into a room and you get hit with that wave of BO, or if you're on a New York City subway and someone holds onto the handrail and you're the one sitting in the
Oh,
seat below them,
the
that is
overhead
not a good
handrail.
seat to have. Mm-mm.
Yeah. Counterpoint, something that must be acknowledged though. There have been instances where I think I'm just sensitive to the specific mixture of fragrances being used, but there have been times, like, of course, the male body is a very disturbing thing. It smells terrible. It's, I can say that because I own one. Uh, but there have been some perfumes where like someone gets in an elevator with you, tight elevator, and it actually is like an irritant where you're just like, my eyes are watering, I can't breathe. Like I actually get like shortness of breath. So I'm just saying, there's a lot of aromas out there that are worth dodging. And I'm very, very stumped by this because the more I think about it, I just cannot even conjure up what this BO smells like. So really interesting. So I think the science about odor is very fascinating to me, because odor is like one of those things where it's like trying to, it's not quite the same, but it's like, when you start thinking like, does everyone see a color the same way? And it's like, what does your blue look like? You try to start like explaining it. But aromas, some of them are so pungent, but others are so subtle. And, we've got these experiments we were talking about with old person smell, where it's like, we're putting clothes in a bag and having people take a whiff. And even when it's not a particularly pungent smell, it's like our body can, kind of sense things about it. And like, I don't know, it's very, very strange to me. I don't understand smell at all. I know very little about how the nose works and how we perceive smell, but it's amazing when they link it to some of these like behavioral things and almost like subconscious responses to smells that don't necessarily grab our attention. You know what I'm getting at here?
Yeah, I mean, also there's certainly lifestyle factors. It's not just hygiene, right? It's if you've ever eaten something really potent and
Oh
then you
yeah.
feel like you're sweating it out the next day. I was at the gym this weekend and there was a very potent smell of brisket, like full on barbecue.
Were you in
And I'm like,
Texas?
either this person had that for breakfast or they are sweating it out
May,
from
maybe that
yesterday.
maybe they are a true brisket person. And so, what time were you at the gym?
It was 11.
They've probably had their brisket on the smoker for 6 hours at that point. They've
Ooh.
been out there in the backyard with the smoker running, tending to the brisket. So we'll give them the benefit of the doubt and say that's it. Because serious brisket people, they're going to smoke that thing for hours and hours and hours on end. That's a whole day event. So
So
maybe.
maybe
But
it's just kind of baked into the skin at that point.
oh yeah, they were wearing that T-shirt when they were out there tending to the smoker. So yeah, that's no big deal. But yeah, it's true. It is true though. Like, body odor, it's gross, but like the smell and pigmentation of your urine, also very sensitive to, different dietary things that they can find their way into your diet. So yeah, there's some like little compounds that have very strong aromas, and they may find their way into sweat and urine. And then you've got a whole new set of problems on your hand when it comes to odors, Lauren.
And
Um,
don't try to cover it up with some nasty cologne or body spray. Just
oh,
wash yourself, please.
Lauren, I don't know what young people are. I should ask my brother because he teaches he was teaching junior high kids, and now I think he teaches freshmen, high schoolers. Um, but that's really when you're just in your smelliest. Like that is peak smelly in that age, coming back from gym class, you're 12 or 13 years old. And I remember when I was around that age, the big thing was Axe body spray. It was like a new thing, and everyone was like, "Oh, this is so cool. They have all these different fragrances." And I can
And they're
object.
all too strong and they're all
Oh,
terrible and
and
you all
there's
used way too much.
yeah, and it's it's an aerosol can, so it's like putting Pam on your body. But the reason I bring that up is because if you've ever looked at a serving of Pam, which is a dietary ingredient, they measure the serving size in how many seconds of spraying you're doing. And whatever the serving
Right.
size is for Axe, it was not made clear to the 12-year-old boy back in that era. So people were layering it on and saying like, "Well, should I shower or use Axe body spray?" And clearly, I can't do both. And they were going Axe body spray, and I actually think it was I think it was actually a verbalized problem at my middle school. I think the teachers actually kind of like got together and had to put out. Essentially, they were pleading. They're just like, "Please stop whatever you're doing." I think they even got the parents involved. It was just like, "Guys, this is chaotic. Like, we talk to your kids about showering, give them a stick of deodorant, have them shower at least once a day, and we'll all be okay." But but yeah, that was just not a good time for noses at all.
It's one of those smells that's just like ingrained in your soul. And so anytime you smell it, it just conjures up those memories.
I know, and the weird thing, yeah, it is one of those things. You smell it once and they come rushing back to you. And that was not a particularly good time of my life, but in a weird way, I still feel like the smells almost conjure a bit of nostalgia, and I can't figure out why. But yeah, that stuff is it's definitely unique, and I think they still make it, right?
They definitely still make deodorant and body wash and stuff. I don't know that they still make the spray, but I can't see why they wouldn't, given the
Yeah, I
past
need to.
success.
I'm gonna take a walk down the deodorant aisle next time I go to the grocery store and check back in. But I'm sure they still make it. It was too good. It was too good, Lauren.
And
Um,
I can tell you their body washes and stuff smell just like that body spray.
oh
Do not
yeah, I
purchase.
used I used
Avoid.
the body wash for sure because guess what? Around that same time frame, wrestling, and we shower after practice, so everyone's got their body wash, and yep, Axe was certainly a favorite, and
Yeah.
yeah, just a lot of smells happening. But Lauren, let's talk a little bit about. I think it's probably a good idea to cover this because it's in the news right now so much. And this may be the last thing we get to in this episode. Well, no, we'll do these two together because they're both kind of government related. So let me start with a quick one here, and then we'll get into a broader one. The very very quick one, which I'm just curious. You have a headline here from the BBC that says why the government wants your pet dog and cat poo. So I feel like we can certainly layer this in with our conversation of bad smells. But what is happening here? Why would the government want the poo from my precious kittens?
So in the UK, they're apparently concerned about pets and humans swapping pathogens and, can we get something from our pets? And so apparently this is going to be a very long trial where they start with just monitoring healthy pets,
Okay.
and then looking at, should we be handling poo more carefully than we are as pet owners, um, and yeah, just looking at what is the bacteria in healthy, and then what is the bacteria in unhealthy, and then looking at if there's any sort of behavior change or concern for the humans.
I just have two comments and then we'll move on. First of all, the picture for this article is adorable. I'm looking
Very
at
cute.
a golden retriever taking a nap and a very cute kitten nuzzled up right next to it. Very sleepy kitten. This is just a 10 out of 10 picture to start with. Second thing I'll say, Lauren, if my cats want to kill me, I'm good with it. Uh, I love those little monsters and they can do what they want. If it happens to cost me my life, I can live with that trade-off because they bring me so much joy. And if that's what they want to do, it's what they're going to do, Lauren. And I'd imagine you feel the same way, at least about Parker.
So I'll just add in one anecdote here. It's actually quite easy to get a stool sample from your dog or cat, no problem. Getting a urine sample from your dog, very, very difficult, and something I have had to do. And when you
Mm.
have a very small dog that is very close to the ground, you're essentially chasing after them with a shallow Tupperware, hoping you can slide it under and the urine some will get in there. It's not a great time. It can be a very, very difficult task.
Okay, now you got me going on a tangent, but two interesting urine facts because, the lab that I do research in at Duke, we do doubly labeled water testing. In many cases, you want to get a urine sample, several urine samples to facilitate that. And we don't only do studies on humans. So I have learned over the course of my time here that you can, first of all, dolphins are so smart, you can train them to give a urine sample. You just say,
Wow.
hop up
Go
on the
pee
little
pee.
thing on the side of the pool, go ahead and pee straight up in the air, and we will catch it. So they will flop up there on their back and provide a sample if they're sufficiently motivated by tasty fish. Um, Another interesting thing is sometimes we'll do studies with very, very small lemurs, and they live in these enclosures, and the ground in some of areas of the enclosures are concrete, and so basically there will be undergraduate research assistants whose job is to just post up. And if you happen to notice that there's a lemur peeing, you got to make sure you note who it is. And then you go scramble and try to pipette it off the floor before
Oh
it
no.
kind of goes down into the drain, on the sloped concrete. So there are some undergrads who are out there kind of like, jolting into action. Oh my God, there's somebody peeing, and they sprint in there and try to collect it all. So props to the people who do the hard work to collect urine, including you, Lauren, trying to get little tiny Parker's urine. Okay, so the reason that I kind of linked these is that was a government initiative to try to get your dog and your cat's poop. Another government initiative, Lauren, is to essentially twist the arm of Coca-Cola and get them to start using the real stuff. So for a long time, I've been led to believe that in Mexico, if you get a Coca-Cola, it's going to be made with cane sugar or sugar, just table sugar. I don't know. But in America, it's going to be made with high fructose corn syrup. And there's been a big push to try to get Coca-Cola to make more of the real sugar Coca-Cola and less of the high fructose corn syrup Coca-Cola. And it sounds like, Lauren, Coca-Cola, according to your headline, is launching a new version with cane sugar instead of high fructose corn syrup. So how do you feel about this?
Yeah, I think if we're going to make major changes, this probably isn't the best choice.
This is like number
Um,
3 on your
like,
list of
yeah,
priorities.
but I did see, I couldn't find the link to it, but I saw some people reacting to it on social media, which was essentially a discussion where somebody was trying to explain why cane sugar is so much healthier for you than high fructose corn syrup, and that even when faced with the decision between this new cane sugar version or a diet Coke, then we should be consuming the cane sugar version and encouraging, you know, all these other soda companies to follow suit, which was a very disappointing message.
Yeah. Yeah. So for context, you got table sugar. It's a 50-50 mixture of glucose and fructose. And you've got, you know, these high fructose corn syrups, which have more fructose than your typical corn syrup. And basically, at least I think that's why it's called that. But the basic thing with high fructose corn syrup is you can alter the amount of fructose that you want in there. And instead of having one part glucose and one part fructose bound together chemically, they're kind of like floating around in solution. That bond between them is broken, and as a result of that, you can kind of tweak the percentage of how much fructose you want, you know, the ratio of fructose to glucose. And so I believe with sodas, mostly they use like 55% fructose. Is that right? It's something around there. It's like 55. It's not greater than 60. And so it's fairly similar, that ratio. There are some versions of high fructose corn syrup that are used for like hard candies and stuff like that are much higher fructose. But the moral of the story, without getting into all the boring stuff in the biochemistry, is functionally the health ramification of drinking a Coca-Cola made with cane sugar and a similar Coca-Cola made with a high fructose corn syrup they currently use in the formula they've been using for years in America, it's just completely negligible. It is going to make zero difference to your health.
Yeah, this is also just part of the general message around, you know, we all need to be monitoring our glucose, and, you know, glucose spikes are really a problem. And there's this big push to avoid certain foods because they're going to, you know, spike your glucose too high. And this is sort of similar to the discussion that we had about cortisol face, because we're taking something that, you know, is a concern. If you're somebody who needs to monitor their blood sugar, if you're somebody who needs to be concerned about insulin, and then making it a problem for everybody who does not need to be worried about it because those glucose spikes are normal, the insulin response is normal, just as the cortisol response is normal in the morning or, you know, in response to exercise. So I think that this is all sort of packaged together in a similarly fear-based way, borrowing a kernel of truth from an unhealthy state and then kind of applying it to the general population. But the most concerning thing here is, if we're concerned about, you know, obesity, then why are we encouraging people to go for the 200-calorie can of Coke instead of the Diet Coke? That's the piece of misinformation that is really troublesome for just general population, because we know that if you're somebody who's drinking a ton of regular soda on a daily basis and you swap that out for diet soda, that can make a fairly substantial difference if you're doing that on a regular basis. And that you could make that one swap and start to lose weight and start to be in better health. So that's that's really grinding my gears about this message.
Yeah, I mean, to put all my cards on the table, I vote regularly, and I am registered as unaffiliated, meaning in terms of my political views, it's kind of a grab bag. I don't just kind of like, you know, vote the party line and use that to inform all my perspectives. So the reason I bring that up is, you know, this has been kind of a big push of all these different things we see in the headlines with, you know, a big shift in the focus of how the government wants to address the health concerns of our country. And at first it was kind of framed as like, hey, we are going to lean in really hard on the causative factors of chronic disease in adults, and with a particular focus on children, you know, childhood obesity, childhood diabetes, things of that nature. Now, I was never fond of the idea of saying like, let's just completely forget about infectious disease or anything like that. Because I could have sworn there was a nasty thing going around a few years ago, but who can remember at this point? But, I was generally like, okay, like, yeah, I mean, if you look at, the, predominant causes of death in our country, like it does make sense to say, hey, let's like dig into this and look at some, allocate some more resources toward behavioral health and various, potential drivers of chronic disease, obesity, heart disease, diabetes, etc. Um, what has really been kind of disappointing is like so far the two big ideas that have really gotten a lot of like cultural purchase and like been all over the internet is like, listen, what if instead of having French fries that were fried in a vegetable oil, what if we fried it in beef tallow? Uh, and what if your 40-ounce Coca-Cola, instead of having high fructose corn syrup, what if that in fact had cane sugar? And I'm like, when we were talking about getting to the root cause of chronic disease, I did not think we were going to talk about which French fries and Coke you should be drinking and eating. I thought we might be getting a little more kind of a couple layers deeper than making these completely inconsequential swaps that have zero impact on your health. So, when someone says, hey, we're going to change over leadership in this, this health organization, this health department, etc., I generally come into it with an open mind and say, okay, we all want everyone to be healthy. Let's see what you got. Let's see what kind of ideas we can get working on day one. And I'm not really thrilled with the major focus being on very modest tweaks, eucaloric tweaks, by the way, things that are not actually changing the macronutrient profile of these foods, that are not changing the caloric content of these foods. Just like, what if your sugar was 50% fructose instead of 55? And the short answer is no one cares, or no one should care. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on it. Is there's a lot of really good research on talking about, for example, Lauren, we don't have to go to a way off into a tangential kind of topic. There's so much good research addressing the potential pros, potential cons, benefits, drawbacks, etc. of saying you're going to sit down and drink a 20-ounce beverage. Your options are full sugar Coca-Cola, a diet Coca-Cola, or water. Go. There's a lot of interesting research about, does it make sense to ditch the full sugar Coke and go with the diet soda? Should you ditch the full sugar Coke and go with the water? Are the potential harms of the full sugar Coke overblown in the context of your diet and your body composition? Like, there's a lot of real meat on the bone there, metaphorically speaking, to dive into with the science, and a lot of good work that could be done. It's not to say it hasn't been done. I'm generally, I'm an advocate of the idea. If you're sitting down at that table with 3 beverages, whether you reach for the water or the Diet Coke, I think you're pretty much going to be more or less going in the same direction. And those would be advisable over the full sugar Coke. But nonetheless, it sucks because it seemed like we were going to really dig into a lot of meaningful research on things like ultra processed foods and, various diet and exercise related interventions that could, really materially impact health. And instead we're getting dragged into these stupid debates about completely inconsequential swaps with frying oils and sugared sodas, which is literally the worst use of our time and resources.
And doesn't help educate the public at all. In fact, it's the opposite.
Oh yeah, we are getting considerably less educated by having these debates kind of play out in public. So yeah, we're not learning anything, we're not improving anything, we're not getting healthier, and so that's disappointing. But hopefully, if nothing else, us addressing this for 10 minutes will help people kind of cut through some of the crazy stuff they're hearing about how apparently, like, you'd be forgiven if you were convinced that beef tallow and cane sugar are the new superfoods. And like back in my day, it was kale. And I'm not a big fan of the general concept of a superfood, but kale is a lot closer than beef tallow, and it's surely a lot closer than cane sugar.
On that note, thanks for listening, everybody. keep your emails coming. We love them. frontpagefitnesspodcast@gmail.com.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got the email right, which is good. I really just someday want to contact whoever has frontpagefitness@gmail.com and say like, hey, do you have 1,000 of our emails sitting around? Because we have been known to hand that one out in the past, but it's frontpagefitnesspodcast@gmail.com. That's where you can reach us. Lauren is a saint. She does all the hard work. She does all the investigative journalism, finding these great topics for us to talk about. She also manages the emails coming in and out. So if you get a really nasty, just a really cruel, snippy email back, rest assured it wasn't me. I'm really not in that inbox. So that blame Lauren for that. But she does, if you do drop an email that is relevant to me in any way, she'll forward it to me and I will read it with various outcomes observed. Sometimes I get very upset. Sometimes I find it to be very touching and heartwarming. So there has been a spectrum. But in any case, everyone, thanks so much for joining us for episode number 16. As long as everything goes well with sponsorships and major life decisions and things like that, we should have at least episode 17 coming your way. That will be in exactly 1 week. We look forward to seeing you. Everyone take care and have a fantastic week.